Nobody likes a copycat. In the writing world, we call this plagiarism. But when you're stepping into a new genre where you have to fit in with other people, whether this is an anthology that's following a theme, a multi-author series, or just a genre packed with heavy hitters, it can be daunting to figure out how to stand out uniquely while also going along and flowing with the rest of the people that you're working with. In the case of anthologies, which often work around themes so that they're easier to market, you find yourself in all of these specific boxes, but still having to be unique. So how do you make sure that your unique voice stands through while also working within the constraints of these different kinds of models? That's exactly what we're diving into today. And I am super excited to share some of my tips and tricks with you, as I have done this on numerous occasions, and most recently in the exact same genre, 2 different ways. This is Janeen Ippolito of Author Culture. Let's talk. Hey there, welcome back. If you're an ambitious science fiction and fantasy author who is looking to achieve sustainable success in a chaotic publishing world, you are in the right place. I am all about equipping and empowering you to reach your unique goals and your finish line in a way that works with your life season. And if you haven't already, do make sure that you subscribe on YouTube, Substack, or your favorite podcast listening platform so that you never miss an episode. And if you're a super fan, make sure that you sign up as a paid subscriber on Substack, because you're going to get 1 to 2 additional episodes a month, which are deep dives on current events. You have the option of requesting special topics, and you have access to my exclusive subscriber chat. Plus, you get my undying gratitude for helping make all of this possible. Now, science fiction and fantasy authors in particular love to mash things up, collaborate with other authors, do anthologies, and do multi-author projects or multi-author series. Multi-author series and multi-author projects and anthologies can be a great way to collaborate with other authors and connect with new audiences together. But as you're considering submitting a story to that anthology or writing for that multi-author series, you might wonder, what do I write about? How do I make my story feel unique when there's so many other stories in this particular project? And how do I stand out while still fitting in with all of these other authors under this bigger umbrella? I've got some solid guidance for you today on how to create stories that are unique and work with your author brand, but also play well with others. Step 1, you need to know the parameters, objectives, and goals of the project that you're already in or submitting to. Before you get started writing, check the parameters and check the instructions and check the application forms in that anthology and know what they're looking for. What's the word count? Are there specific themes, tropes, or plot structures that you need to include? Are there content restrictions or content guidelines? This is where we're talking about sexuality, violence, and language. Those are the big hitters, and you need to make sure that your story is going to play well with all the other stories in this project. And does the project have existing lore that you need to work within? This is especially important for multi-author series or anthologies. You need to understand the boundaries before you consider how to put your own spin on it. And for my example with this, I have written a superhero book that is the first in a series of superhero books in my own universe. I've also written a superhero short story that I submitted to the Dosa anthology, and it ended up in volume 3 of that anthology. And that anthology is interested in short stories in an existing superhero universe that is different from my superhero universe. Now, in both of these cases, in the case of the book and the case of the short story, I actually did them in communication with my friend Heidi Burke, who, if you aren't aware, has done so many things in the superhero universe with her books and has this giant epic world. So in terms of the superhero book, that book actually originated as an anthology submission to an earlier anthology done by Heidi Burke, H.L. Burke. It was called Hall of Heroes. And so I created a little tiny superhero short story for that anthology. And I had my readers going, you need to make this into a book. You need to make this into a book. And I was like, oh, no. And finally, I wrote it as a book. And my motivation behind writing that book was multifold. It was an escape from my current stressful life situations. Yes, I am sometimes a stress writer. It was something that I knew my readers were interested in and that they wanted. And also, I was talking with my friend Heidi, and she was like, hey, I'd like more superhero comp titles if you ever want to write a superhero book. So we have this one book that was inspired by a lot of different angles, but that since I was aware that my friend had already done this vast superhero universe, I definitely wanted to do something different from her, but also something that could be a comp title. And then I also submitted a short story to one of her anthologies that's set in her superhero universe and uses all of her world building. So one superhero book over here that is all of my world building, but comps with hers, and then a short story that actually fits completely in her world building. So yes, I can see it both ways. And for the book, I pretty much did what I felt like, but I already had a short story that I had written based in that kind of universe that I had created. So I followed that. And since my books and Heidi's books can comp with each other anyway, I wasn't really worried about that. So the boundaries for that were pretty lax, especially because I like coming up with unique and weird things. And if someone says, oh, make sure that it's something different, yeah, that's going to happen. I will definitely come up with something weird. But for the short story that I submitted specifically for her anthology, I had to enter into that lore and into that world and figure out what was going to fit within her existing stories. So you can see in both of these areas, I had to figure out how to put my own spin on it in different ways. In one way, it was very, very loose because I already had put my own spin on it. It was my existing short story. And I just wanted that book to market happily with other books because then I would have built-in cross-promotion buddies. On the other hand, I was submitting a book specifically to an anthology with a specific universe and specific rules and specific characters who were already involved in that world. And in that case, it helps that I'd already read at least 10 or 15 of the books in that universe, and I'm reading more. So that helped to kind of get into that mindset. So after you know the objectives and goals of this multi-author series or this anthology you're submitting to, after you know the parameters and you understand the expectations with getting involved in this collaborative project, then you need to set your own goals for the kind of story you're going to be writing. And I highly recommend you consider this as well. Figure out what you want out of this book or this short story. I mean, sure, if you feel inspired, you can just write whatever comes out and put it out there in the world like a beautiful butterfly. But if you can step back and do a little bit of extra strategy and thinking, then you can have this short story or this book work for you on a more long-term basis, not simply for this series or this anthology. Think about if you want this book or story to be a one-off or if you want it to kickstart a new universe. For the superhero book that I wrote based on my short story, which I created in my universe, I knew I wanted to kickstart a series, mostly because I already had ideas for 4 or 5 books in that series. This was one of the reasons why I actually was kind of staying away from it because I knew it would turn into a series. But once I was there, I'm like, okay, let's do it. And then it ended up being a cliffhanger. Yes, I do know how the rest of it ends, and it will get out there, readers. Conversely, the short story that I wrote for the Dosa Anthology Volume 3, I wrote that as a one-off, and I emailed Heidi and I said, you can keep this. I'm not going to go anywhere with this. This is entirely your thing. Since I already have my own superhero verse, there's no way I'm going to want to adapt this into anything. Tweak it as you like. It's yours. So that's something you do have to consider when you are working on a book or a short story for an anthology or multi-author series or some other collaborative project. Do you want it to be a one-off or do you want it to be a kickstart? Do you want this to tie into an existing story world? When I was writing a short story for a magical cats anthology, I have a cat dragon character in one of my existing story universes, my steampunk universe. And so I decided that my cat dragon was going to get his own short story in this magical cats anthology. So say if a reader was interested in that story that I wrote and they wanted to know more, they could connect to my other larger universe and enjoy those stories as well. And that can be a great way that a short story in an anthology can just sort of work on autopilot to slowly and steadily drive readers to your existing storyverse. Now, you do have to make sure that your short story still works as a complete short story, that it's not kind of a little sketch of your larger story world. And there actually are some anthologies and multi-author series that don't want you to set anything in an existing story world, partly because they want it to be something unique that's really fitted to that anthology or that series. So that's where you have to check your parameters. But many times authors will set a short story or a book written for a multi-author series in an existing world so that it can tie in and they can get long-term benefit from it beyond the publication of that multi-author series or the anthology. This can be a fantastic way to attract new readers. And quick tip, if you're writing for an anthology or multi-author series and plan on expanding that short story or book into its own book series, check the exclusivity terms. Many, if not all projects, require your book to remain part of that overall multi-author series collection for a period of time, and the same is true for anthologies. They'll say, okay, for 3 months, don't independently publish this short story. For 3 months, it's only going to be found in this anthology, and after that, you can do what you want with it. So make sure that you check those exclusivity terms. That comes along with knowing the parameters. And for step number 3, it's time to look into my same and different method. This is a concept I covered in my genre research episode, but it applies here as well. Same. What are the required elements of the project? The short story, the book that you're submitting to the multi-author series, and what expectations from readers is this anthology or multi-author series trying to meet? So make sure you hit those required elements in your short story or your multi-author series project. That's just part of knowing the parameters, playing nice with others, and making sure that all the authors in this whole project are going to benefit. But then think about different. What are you uniquely going to bring to your story? What aspects of the trope or theme excite you? What do you have to say that's fresh or unexpected? What do you not want to include, or what do you want to sidestep? And if you're using the short story or this book to expand on some aspect of your existing story world, what elements of your world haven't been explored yet? What characters or events do readers ask about and wish that they would learn more about? If you choose one of those topics and it fits with the theme and expectations of the project, then you have a double win there, because you're going to bring readers to this bigger project who want to know about the specific event or character, and then while they're there, will often read the other stories or books in that project as well. So everybody wins. So step 1, know the parameters, boundaries, and objectives of the project that you're submitting to or that you're a part of. Step 2, set your own goals that make sense for you and that align with the parameters, guidelines, and requirements of the project. And step 3, use the same and different method. What things have to be the same as all the other books in the project, the series, or the anthology? And then what are some different or fresh spins that you can bring to it? Now, for the same and different method for my superhero book versus my superhero short story written for an anthology in a different universe, for the book, I was actually very well versed in superhero lore of my own. I grew up reading comic books. I loved watching superhero TV shows, and I still do, even though they tend to get canceled sometimes, which bums me out. So I had a vast array of lore to pull from. And so I decided that my verse was actually going to start way back when the government was first trying to figure out what to do with people with superpowers. I was going to pull on some X-Men. I was going to pull on the vibes of Heroes, the TV show where people with powers have kind of always been around but are just starting to emerge in the public eye. I was going to pull some of those vibes in. I was going to pull some vibes in from the movie Power, which had the idea that you could take a pill that would give you short-term superpowers or kill you. I know, great premise. So I pulled all of those things together and wove them into my story verse rather than doing a lot of Marvel. While I use Marvel words in my marketing because everyone knows Marvel, I actually pulled from a few lesser known superhero verses for my storytelling to make sure it was fresh and unique, and also to say things that were interesting to me and to tell a story that I really cared about. And of course, conversely, when I submitted a short story to a superhero anthology in someone else's verse, I had already read, I think, at least 12 books of that story verse. So I knew that story verse, and I even used one of the prompts that was given by the anthology editor, Heidi, and decided to run with it just to make sure that it was something that she was really interested in and wanted to have featured in her anthology. And it just so happened that that prompt, which had to do with an author's search history being tracked by a superhero who then finds that the crimes that she's writing about have been actually committed, that was right up my alley with working in the publishing industry. So I was so excited to talk about the publishing industry and superheroes in that. And so that spin was already just really tailor-made for my interest. So 2 different angles. Working in someone else's verse, you need to respect the verse. Working within someone else's anthology, you need to respect that. And if you're working within a multi-author series, you need to respect the boundaries of the series and the parameters therein. But then figure out how to put your own unique spin on it, because that helps you to bring value, that helps readers to enjoy all the different books for what they are, and then leave reviews saying, well, every single book in this series is different, but they all have that common thread, and I just want to read one after the other after the other. So same and different. So have you submitted a short story to an anthology or a multi-author project? Do you have other tips and tricks that you could share with our whole community here at Author Culture? Please do comment with them on YouTube, on Substack, or on your favorite podcast platform. I would love to hear what you have to share. And if you found this episode helpful, please do share it with a fellow author. This is Janeen Ippolito. Go forth and be awesome.